look like an extra from a Jane Fonda exercise video. Hey, do you think I could make that a thing? JK, my idea of planking is lying on the floor with a blanket and a book. Sometimes a little tea light for some ambience. The only movement involved would be me reaching for the bowl of snacks. And it is time for the monthly torture session that is picking my TBR. This month, guest starring Malice. That's right, this month's choices were picked for me from a place of pure vengeance with maximum spite applied. Buckle up, kids, because it's gonna be a bumpy ride. I already regret all of this. Yay me. If you're new here, welcome. We play 2 TBR games every month on this channel. First up, we have my hashtag Year of Readathons, wherein I set myself 5 readathon prompts every month. They're either loosely based on a theme or they're chosen for me by people that don't like me and want me to suffer. See this month's prompts. And if you guys like the prompts, you are more than welcome to join in my little monthly readathon with me. And next up, we play Stack It, wherein we make a physical stack of 5 books and we read from top to bottom without skipping them. If we skip any, we have to unhaul them because it really just means that you don't want to read that book. Like, probably ever. If you're not motivated to read it now, when are you going to be motivated to read it? Honestly, the logic of Stack It has brought me such joy and much room on my shelves. Now, you guys all know how much I love a good mystery prompt. Last month we generated prompts from codenames. I also did a side challenge that was a scavenger hunt chosen by you guys, and in January we picked books based on randomly generated colours. But this month I decided that it might be a good idea to just hand my fate to someone else. That's right, this month all of my prompts are coming from one of my very best Judies, Kirsty. Kirsty runs this Bookstagram account and you can send her hate there. In retrospect, this was a terrible, terrible life choice and I don't know why I did it. I asked Kirsty to send me an email with no subject line and no previews, and I said that I would open that email with you guys. In this case, I cheated a little bit and I opened it last night because I had the fear. She just seemed too happy about this email and my prediction was correct. It's awful. This month is awful. Because you see, Kirsty has not just given me my 5 prompts for this month. She has in fact given me 10 prompts. And she says at the bottom of the email that I have printed out so that I may rip it up ceremoniously after we have finished these prompts, I will allow you to pick books that fit both a prompt from 1 to 5 and a prompt from 6 to 10. Because I'm nice like that. Apparently nice has now become a subjective term. Good to know. Would have been good to know before we went into this, but here we are. Let's just dive right in. Shall we? I think let's just rip off the plaster. Let's talk about prompts 1 to 5. First up, we have a book by a First Nations author. Then we have a book set in Australia. So far so good, right? Interesting prompts, very me. But here's where the shade kicks in. Prompt 3 is a book over 400 pages. Prompt 4 is a book that has been on my TBR for over 12 months. And book 5 is the next book in a series. It's like she knows my individual feelings or something, poking at them with a sharp stick. But Leigh, I hear you say, it's not actually that bad. Just remember you said that when I read you the rest of these. Just remember whose side you were on. Prompt 6 is, and I quote, a book you bought because of me and still haven't picked up because you're a monster. Honestly, with friends like these, who needs lifelong vendettas? Prompt number 7 is very freaking specific. It is read a Tessa Dare book. Because you see, I started a Tessa Dare series like last year or the year before and I freaking loved it. And Kirsty has been trying to make me read the rest of the series since then and I have not done so. Prompt 8 is a book on your mother Kindle, Leanne. And no, you're not allowed to spend money during your book buying ban to get it on audio as well. Thanks, I hate you. Prompt 9. Prompt 9 I'm taking to heart. Prompt 9 is a non-fiction book that isn't a batshit crazy memoir about pain and grief and lost. I have never felt more attacked and yet more seen in my entire life. That is my freaking niche pitch. And finally, prompt 10, just to top it all off ever so sweetly, is a book with a purple cover. I mean, thanks for that, I think. So, this is what it feels like when you realise that your friends don't actually like you. Okay, let's crack on. Let's get it over with. As predicted by Kirsty, I'm going to try to double up as many of these prompts as physically possible. So for prompt 1, a book by a First Nations author, I am going to pick Dark Emu by Bruce Pascoe. This is a non-fiction book which essentially picks apart some of the colonial beliefs of Australia. It is a widely held belief in Australia and everywhere else around the world that Aboriginal people were hunter-gatherers. That they were nomadic, that they moved in tribes from place to place, hunting seasonal game. But Bruce Pascoe argues that this is completely not the case, that the actual evidence that we have found in the ground says that Aboriginal peoples had really advanced agriculture. They were sowing, they were harvesting, they were using domestic plants, they had really advanced animal care and food production. Bruce Pascoe essentially argues that the evidence is all there, readily available before us, and the only reason to ignore it is continued racism. Now, this is a book that could easily tick off 2 other prompts on the second half of our prompt list, because this is a book that Kirsty did recommend to me that I have not yet picked up, but it is also a non-fiction book that is not technically about grief or familial loss, which is my weird niche area of interest. It's a hard toss-up too, because I have a lot of books that fit in both of these categories on my shelves, but for the purposes of right now of this TBR, I'm going to go for a book that Kirsty has recommended that I have not yet picked up. If you guys are playing along with your readathons at home, you can always use a book that I have recommended to you that has been sitting on your TBR that you have not yet picked up. The next prompt on my list is a really freaking easy one to fill for me. This is a book set in Australia, and for this one I'm going to be picking The Survivors by Jane Harper. This is Jane Harper's latest thriller. I am dearly devoted to her. She is an Australian author. She is the author of my favourite thriller of all time, and I don't know why I have not read this one yet. I think it's that weird thing that I do where I'm like, I will put this off for a rainy day. Actually, technically it rains in Scotland all the time. I really don't have any excuses. I've tried to keep myself quite ignorant about the premise of this one, as I do with all of Jane Harper's books now, so I'm just going to read you the tiny little blurb that I have. It made me very excited in a book haul recently. I'll link that up here. Coming home dredges up deeply buried secrets. Kieran Elliott's life changed forever on the day a reckless mistake led to devastating consequences. The guilt that still haunts him resurfaces during a visit with his young family to the small coastal town he once called home. Kieran's parents are struggling in a town where fortunes are forged by the sea. Between them all is his absent brother, Finn. When a body is discovered on the beach, long-held secrets threaten to emerge. A sunken wreck, a missing girl, and questions that never washed away. I love that Jane Harper is essentially obsessed with small towns and family secrets, because those are the things that make a thriller for me. Unfortunately, that pick does not fulfill anything from 6 to 10 on the prompt list, so that's just going to be an outlier. Next up, we have a book that is over 400 pages, and I'm not gonna lie, as soon as I saw this prompt, I knew exactly what book I was going to be reading. It popped into my head like a yellow coloured wish, and that book is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This one was also in last month's book haul, and it doesn't have a purple cover, so that also means that it doesn't apply to anything on Kirsty's 6 to 10 list. I wonder what book she was wishing I picked up for this one, because I feel like she had titles in mind for all of these. This one starts out in 1902 at Brookhands Girls' School, where 2 girls are completely in love with each other. They have started their own little secret society. They love literature, and they become obsessed with the debut memoir of a 19-year-old girl. But a few months after reading this memoir, their bodies are found in the woods in very mysterious circumstances. The school then closed down, and the mystery of Brookhands has been in the community consciousness for a very long time. Over 100 years later, the school then is thrown open again when a Hollywood production team brings some very young actresses to shoot a movie based on the Brookhands curse. All of these young actresses are desperate to make a name for themselves in Hollywood, and they'll pretty much do anything to achieve that, even if it means hanging around in the school when they know for absolutely certain that something supernatural and spooky is going on. This essentially sounds like it was written for me, just with me in mind. Next up, we have number 4, a book that has been on my TBR for more than 12 months. Most of the books that have been on my TBR for that long are actually Kindle books, which fits in nicely with Kirsty's other list. Prompt number 8 is a very nastily worded prompt to read a book that is on my Kindle. So I am going to scratch both of those off with The Butchers. So The Butchers by Ruth Gilligan was actually a book that was also recommended to me by someone else. This one came from the lovely Victoria over at What Victoria Read. I will put her link also in the description bar so you can go and check her out. She's also one of my best Judies. And I preface the description of this book by telling you that because it doesn't sound like a very Leanne book, because it is a historical fiction book set in Ireland. I'm not very keen on historical fiction, and I usually hate books set in Ireland. And I've tried 3 times to describe this, so I'm just going to read you the blurb because it's so weird and complicated, and it's a mystery, but it's also a thriller, but it's also a folklore retelling. It just... A photograph is hung on a gallery wall for the very first time since it was taken 2 decades before. It shows a slaughterhouse in rural Ireland, a painting of the Virgin Mary on the wall, a meat hook suspended from the ceiling, and from its sharp point, the lifeless body of a man hanging by his feet. The story of who he is and how he got there casts back into Irish folklore, of widows cursing the land and of the men who slaughter its cattle by hand. But modern Ireland is distrustful of ancient traditions, and as the beef crisis essentially in England presents a get-rich opportunity in Ireland, few care about the butchers, the 8 men who roam the countryside, slaughtering the cows of those who still have faith in the old ways. Few care, that is, except for Fionn, the husband of a dying woman who still believes, their son Davy, who has fallen in love with the youngest of the butchers, Ra, the lonely wife of one of the 8, and her 12-year-old daughter Una, a girl who will grow up to carry a knife like her father and who will be the one to finally avenge the man in the photograph. See what I mean? I would have no idea how I would go about explaining that premise. I'm excited for this one because I have absolutely no idea what tone to expect from it. I don't know whether it's going to go like the mythical retelling route or whether it's going to go like a more modern thriller with spooky beginnings. But Victoria gave it 5 stars, so I'm going to give it a good college try. Next up, we have got the next book in a series, because Kirsty knows that I am a serial series reader. I have a lot of series on the go at any one time, and it takes me a long time to get through them. But she's played right into my hands here because one of her other prompts is a Tessa Dare book, and of course I have the second book in this series, which is why she put it on the freaking list. So that is what I am going to read. It is the second book in the Girl Meets Duke series. The Duchess Deal is genuinely one of my favourite books of all time. It uses that trope of a not society lady marrying a society man so that people will essentially leave him alone. So, you know, somewhere to go if you've watched Bridgerton and you want more of that trope in your life. In The Duchess Deal, our main character meets 3 kind of outcast women who like her are on the fringes of society but still somehow maintain like half a foothold in it. They're respectable but only just. And in The Duchess Deal, we saw Alexandra meet the man who she is going to go and work for as a governess for his 2 extremely wild charges. Extremely wild. The thing is, when Alexandra gets there, she doesn't think that the children actually need extra discipline. She believes that what they need is a loving home, which is not really what her employer wants to hear, because he is the heir of a duke and he just wants to be left alone to do the things that he's allowed to do in society because he's a white man of privilege. I am very excited to watch Alexandra tell him what to do, because Tessa Dare's heroines are not backwards in coming forwards. So if my dubious maths is right, that means that I have these 2 prompts left and I have 5 books already on my TBR. Yay me! Not winning at life, but winning at something. So the 2 that I have left over are the easy one, which is a book with a purple cover, and the other one, which is a non-fiction book, which isn't a weird niche lost memoir. So for this one, I think I am going to pick Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel Acho. This one was sent to me in January by the wonderful people at Book Break, and it has been high on my list since it landed on my doorstep. This is essentially a primer on racism and how to begin to tackle the issue of how to become actively anti-racist in your life. It starts with the sentence, "You cannot fix a problem that you do not know you have." And then each chapter after that is all based on a specific question, like, should I say the N-word? What is white privilege? Can black people be racist? Each of these chapters holds up all of these taboo beliefs to a really bright spotlight, and in doing so it kind of demystifies them and makes them easier to talk about. So I've said this many times, I read the first couple of pages of every book that comes through my door, and this was one of those ones where I looked up after 2 chapters and was like, oh god, I'm supposed to be working right now. So I'm really excited to get back to it because it completely sucked me in. Then finally we have got the oh so gentle prompt, a book with a purple cover. For that one I am going to be reading Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. Again, this is another one that came in really recently and was in that book haul that I've linked to a few times already. Link will also be down below. I try and be really balanced with the books that I put on my TBR every month. I try and read some older ones and some newer ones, but I need to know this story, okay? I want to read it now. This one is about Tamsin. She is one of the most powerful witches of her age, but she commits a magical crime and her punishment is to have her magic taken away from her. The problem is that Tamsin's magic is what makes her able to feel things, specifically to feel love towards other people. Living with that is like a living death as far as she is concerned. And so when she meets Ren, who is a girl who is a magical source, a rare kind of person who is able to give magic users more power, she strikes a bargain. There is a plague ravaging this land and killing Ren's father. Ren tasks Tamsin with finding the witch who started the plague and killing her, and in return Ren will give Tamsin her love for her father so that she can feel again. But of course it is a sapphic fantasy romance, so things are not going to exactly go that easily. Give me the book. I want to read it now. Great! Well, I love that. So out of all of these 10 prompts, here are the books that we have ended up with for this month's Year of Readathon's TBR. Weirdly, only these 4 are actually physical books. The rest of them I have as Kindle or audiobooks. So that means that this is the order that I will be reading these books in for Stack It. That is a really easy stack. That's the one good thing that Kirsty has given me for this month. I don't think I'm going to skip any of these, so I don't think I'm going to actually have to unhaul anything, because Stack It only applies to physical books. Thank you, past Leanne. I do, as usual, have a few other things that I would like to get to this month just for me and myself. The first of those is Siege and Storm, which is the second in the Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo. I read the first book of that this month for Becca's Bookopoly-thon. I will link our live show down below for that if you would like to retroactively sprint with us. I really liked Shadow and Bone as much as all of y'all tried to put me off of it, and so I'm going to go on and I'm going to read Siege and Storm. I will not be taking questions at this time, thank you. Next up, I am also going to be picking up the second book in the Athena Club series by Theodora Goss. I read The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter recently and I am now completely obsessed. It is one of my new favourite books of all time, and I'm hoping the second book in the series, which I can clearly tell you nothing about, holds up just as well, because I would like to love the whole series, please and thank you. And I would also like to get to Bingo Love. This is a graphic novel that lovely wife Helen bought me for my birthday. It is about Hazel and Mary who met in 1963 at church bingo and fell completely head over heels in love with each other, but because of society and family pressure they broke up, they stopped seeing each other, and now years and years later they meet up at another bingo hall. I'm prepared to have my heart swell, break and be knitted back together again. So that's it guys, that is everything that is actually on my What month is it? Is it April? Oh, my April TBR. Wow, this year is just flying by. And hey, next time you guys see me, I will have had my first dose of the vaccine. And no matter how groggy it potentially makes me, I will be here celebrating. So as always guys, please let me know if you will be taking part in my year of readathons for April. Keep tagging me on social media. I love to see what you're reading. Tell me if you have read any of the books that are on my TBR for this month, or if you're going to be picking them up. And of course, if you have any recommendations based on any of these books, you know that your girl wants them. In April, I will have 3 more months of a book buying ban left. So there's going to be a tiny spree when it ends. Make sure your recommendation is on there. If you guys enjoyed this video, please whack the like button down below so that other people can see it and torture themselves with my prompts. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I do this to myself every month for your amusement. You may as well come back. And I will speak to all of you guys very soon. Bye! Do you think the nurse is going to ask me about my cat scratches? I'm sorry, could you give me my vaccine just a little bit to the right because my cat tried to use me as a climbing frame?